the Red Sox are falling apart. Their offenses looked anemic, and their pitchers, when you have it's just when you put out Garrett Richards and Martin Perez as your starting rotation and you're trying to win a division, it's just not going to work. It's not going to work. And
they did that for the first half of the season, and it did work. So how come now they're 65 and 50?
Never worked. He's not been strong all season. Garrett Richards, as soon as they got rid of the spider tack thing, he forgot how to throw. He had no pitches. Have a pitcher just trying to learn how to throw a curveball in the middle of the season while you're trying to win the pennant. It's just not going to work. And the Red Sox did absolutely nothing aside from getting Kyle Schwarber at the deadline. They got a reliever who's so far not been good at all in Robles, and they didn't get a starting pitcher. And obviously you're getting Chris Sale back if he's, at least somewhat like he has been in the past, say in 2018. But that's kind of a risk. You don't know if he's going to be 100%. And that's just one guy. You need a rotation of 5 people going down the stretch that can actually win games. And right now I really only have faith in Nathan Eovaldi, who's sometimes struggled. Eduardo Rodriguez is getting a little bit better, but he has had his struggles this season. Nick Pivetta is really the only go-to guy on the Red Sox right now. And even when he's pitching, they're not giving him run support. It's kind of like the Mets with DeGrom. It's really hard to watch sometimes, and recently at least. They're finding terrible ways to lose games, and I'm blaming that completely on Matt Barnes because he has been awful. He has been so bad. So the Red Sox right now, they're up 10-0. They'll probably find a way to make it 10-5 by the time we're done this. So I really have very little faith in my Red Sox right now. So I don't know. I definitely don't think the Yankees are going to push for the division, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Yankees knock the Red Sox out of the second place for the wild card because the A's, haven't really slowed down on a tear, and the Red Sox are going the opposite direction.
Yeah, I think that the pitching was never the reason the Red Sox were in it. Garrett Richards was really good in the first half of the year. Matt Barnes was an all-star, right? Was an all-star or was damn close if he wasn't. It's, Rafael Devers is going to have a 35, 110 hitting 290 season, which is MVP level stuff if you're not up against Shohei Ohtani or Vlad Guerrero Jr., which unfortunately for him he is. And they've had really good seasons from guys who you haven't necessarily seen that from. So I guess, was this a season? Because for me, as a Yankee fan, projecting it out preseason, I looked at it and said the Rays got worse by losing Blake Snell. The Red Sox stink out loud. The Blue Jays are young. This should be our division and a runaway. Obviously, I was wrong. Were you in any way, shape, or form optimistic about this Red Sox team to be sick? I mean, we'll give them the win, 66 and 50 on August 12th.
No, not at all.
So I think at some point you have to say, okay, well, Rafael Devers is having a legitimate MVP caliber season, and if the pitching can come back a little bit, maybe they have a chance to push Oakland and host the wild card game. Or is it just, this is the team I thought they were going to be, and it's a complete free fall from here on? Because honestly, I can see it being both. I can see it okay, well, they kind of remembered how to pitch, and yeah, Max Scherzer would have helped at the deadline, but all right, they're going to host a wild card game. They get crushed by Oakland, and now they're out of the playoffs. But I could also see it being yeah, that's the team that I thought they were in February. They go straight downhill, and they miss the playoffs by 3 games.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I don't know. I like to consider last year as a bit of an odd season. It was only 60 games. You don't get
Certainly, yes.
An MLB team in 60 games. You just don't. So last year, I think, was a bit of a fluke for the Red Sox. Obviously, they were terrible. They were one of the worst teams in the MLB. And all of the All-Stars that won them a World Series in 2018 had terrible seasons. JD Martinez was nowhere to be found. Rafael Devers had an off season. It's just it was a very bad season, but it was a very short season. And it was almost, not necessarily a full season. If you go back to just 3 years ago, they won a World Series with largely this core plus all of the outfielders that they've now traded away. But they've replaced them with Alex Verdugo, who has been arguably the same or better offensively as Mookie Betts since he joined the Red Sox, and Mookie joined the Dodgers. And, you have plenty of bats in this lineup that can hit. JD Martinez is having a bounce back year. I think that I was a little bit too focused on how terrible they were in 2020. And I let that just completely block my mind from thinking that they'd have a good season. And then they also started out the season getting swept by the Orioles, worst team in baseball. So that didn't help. And but at this point, I feel like I've rationalized that the Red Sox are a good team, that they have, they have basically a very similar team to what they had, the winning formula in 2018. And at this point, now that they're, have lost 8 of their last 10, and they've had something like 4-12 record. I don't know. It's a blind guess, but somewhere around that since the trade deadline, while the Yankees and the Rays have both had, and the Blue Jays have all been amazing since the trade deadline. It's just a really, really scary time to be the Red Sox.
I think, I think they're going to be able to hold serve. I do. I think that their offense has been really – that Verdugo as good as Betts comment shows your fandom, because I think that's incorrect.
Yes. If you look at the numbers, they're very –
I mean, Mookie Betts almost won an MVP last year, and Alex Verdugo was on the worst team. But okay.
Betts brings so much more to the table defensively than Verdugo, so obviously he is the better player no matter what.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I think they're going to be able to hold serve just because their offense can just light this team on fire at pretty much any point, right? That especially Devers and Verdugo and Martinez can just absolutely light this team on fire, and their pitching's not going to matter. But I think that's the only way that it's going to happen. Their pitching could get a little bit better. Honestly, it can't get worse. They have no starting pitchers with an ERA under 4, but I do think that their offense is the way to go if they're going to make the playoffs, but I hope they don't. So sorry.